Are you convinced that the US Navy is in trouble? The United States Navy appears determined to find solutions to strengthen the company's naval industry. Indeed, the US Navy has been long regarded as the ruler of the seas, especially since World War II, and Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to lead the most powerful naval force in the world, is determined to restore the US Navy's reputation. To start, a record military budget has been allocated to the American naval industry. Nevertheless, the US Navy is losing momentum. But the United States doesn't seem to have said its last word. Can the US Navy still be considered the ruler of the seas? The United States Armed Forces are extremely powerful, and the US Navy is part of them. Since World War II, it has been considered the world's leading naval force. The US Navy truly asserted itself with the outbreak of World War II. Indeed, the United States Senate passed the Naval Expansion, more commonly known as the Two-Ocean Navy Act, on June 14, 1940. Subsequently, other laws were also passed. These laws allocated considerable funds to the American fleet, allowing it to grow by 70%. 1,325,000 tons of warships were built. 100,000 tons of auxiliary ships were purchased or converted. Thus, the American naval industry's workforce increased to 15,000 units. On September 2, 1940, the Destroyers for Bases Agreement was signed. It led to the transfer of 50 destroyers to the Royal Navy, collectively known as the Town class. Armed with these new measures, the US Navy joined the conflict. By offering its help to the United Kingdom, it forced the U-boats to limit their attacks. These German submarines were a source of pride for their leaders during both World Wars, and in September 1941, US Navy ships participated in escorting convoys in the North Atlantic, entering the Second Battle of the Atlantic. On October 17, 1941, a U-boat severely damaged the destroyer USS Kearney. Then, the USS Reuben James was sunk by a German submarine. At the time of the Pearl Harbor attack, the US Navy only had 6 operational aircraft carriers. As a result, it had to make do with the resources available. Consequently, the industrial power of the United States asserted itself in 1943. By 1945, the US Navy had 95 aircraft carriers and over 41,000 aircraft, with 70% of the world's tonnage. It was the peak of its power. After the peak of World War II, the number of US Navy ships has been steadily declining. Moreover, since the beginning of the 21st century, major operations by American forces engaged in the fight against terrorism have reached substantial costs. This has inevitably impacted the programs for renewing the American fleet. In 2006, it fell below the threshold of 260 warships. The US Navy hopes to put an end to this decline by acquiring new ships. In any case, the US Navy is not ready to give up and is multiplying actions to improve its defense capabilities. And to achieve this, the US Navy is thinking big. Indeed, by the end of 2024, Lisa Franchetti becomes the first woman appointed to lead the American fleet. This nomination is historic, as it is the first time a woman has led the most powerful navy in the world. After months of gridlock, the Senate finally approved this appointment with 95 votes in favor and 1 against. However, nothing initially destined Lisa Franchetti for a military career. Born in 1964, she first obtained a journalism degree. She then turned to the Navy and graduated from the Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps in 1985. However, when she joined the military, women were still relegated to positions on auxiliary ships. Despite this, she quickly climbed the ranks. On September 2, 2002, she was appointed Deputy Chief of Naval Operations, equivalent to being the right hand of the US Navy Command. Only one woman before her had held this position between 2014 and 2016. Similarly, she is the first woman to sit on the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff, which includes the highest-ranking members of each branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. And it seems this appointment is a boon for the U.S. Navy. Thanks to Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the future challenges of the U.S. Navy are evolving, revolutionizing American naval defense. To begin with, in the United States, the year 2024 is marked by the allocation of an unprecedented military budget, amounting to $886.3 billion. This amount, a 3% increase from the previous year, allows for a 5.2% pay raise for soldiers and civilian employees of the Department of Defense, totaling 3.4 million people. US President Joe Biden hopes to strengthen the country's defense with this. Today, American shipbuilding is at an impasse, and its future concerns the Pentagon. Indeed, this naval supremacy is essential to maintain the United States' position on the global geopolitical stage. But to achieve this, the US Navy must undergo a genuine reindustrialization. There's also the matter of the rapid rise of the Chinese Navy. The US Navy has also had to increase its presence in the Mediterranean to support its ally Israel, as well as in the Middle East and the Korean Peninsula. Furthermore, the war in Ukraine forces the US Navy to tighten its defenses in the North Atlantic and the Arctic to contain Moscow's submarine power. All these actions are beginning to create a manpower problem. Additionally, for many years, the international environment has been marked by the continued modernization of naval capabilities. The American naval forces must therefore rely on new technologies to regain their former strength. And in terms of quality, the US Navy seems to have every chance. But it is still necessary to make changes in operational organization and fleet deployment beyond the inevitable increase in forces. Does the US Navy still have time to turn things around? Despite these good intentions, the American fleet is losing ground. How much longer will it be able to maintain its power? Indeed, the United States is facing significant difficulties with its military construction programs. In recent decades, the US Navy's programs have reached unprecedented levels in terms of units and billions spent, but very few have come to fruition. Moreover, the US Navy fears that its ships are underarmed to respond to all the threats surrounding it. Faced with the advent of attack drones and ballistic missiles, American ships feel endangered. Today, the US Navy has chosen to rely on technology by creating the most heavily armed ships available. But will that be enough? As you may have understood, the Chinese Navy seems to be overtaking the US Navy, which is particularly concerning. The American naval industry is therefore stuck in a standoff with China, and the Pentagon is waiting for one thing: for it to accelerate the delivery schedules of certain ships, such as the Arleigh-Burke destroyers, Virginia-class attack submarines, and Constellation-class frigates. However, it struggles to meet delivery timelines, which greatly tarnishes the American defense industry. As a result, the United States is attempting to revolutionize its defense principles, particularly through the multiplication of naval operations. Let's take the example of the Houthis in Yemen, who are attacking numerous ships in the Red Sea. These attacks have pushed the United States to create an international military cooperation. Similarly, a dozen countries, including France, the United Kingdom, Italy, and Spain, are conducting joint patrols in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. This is therefore an international challenge that requires collective action. That's why Operation Prosperity Guardian was created, ensuring the security of ships. Instead, the Houthis' attacks also disrupt maritime trade, forcing freight companies to divert around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa to avoid the Suez Canal. These new routes result in additional costs and significant delays. In the face of the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, the United States has also decided to deploy numerous ships in the Mediterranean. Thus, the American fleet continues to shine with its power. To continue dominating the oceans, the US Navy has decided to develop a brand new weapon. This weapon uses high-powered microwaves to effectively destroy anti-ship missiles and drones. Like lasers, microwaves can be used inside weapons to disable certain electronic devices. The Meteor project is expected to take shape by 2026. Unlike lasers, which aim to burn and melt the target, microwave energy causes irreversible damage to electronic components. It could destroy drones or anti-ship missiles. Furthermore, its ability to strike multiple targets simultaneously would be very significant. In the near future, such a weapon could complement the arsenal already available to the US Navy. On the other hand, the US Navy wants to create an underwater test base for hypersonic missiles to integrate them into the next evolution of Virginia-class submarines. The arms race never ends. Such missiles could help the US Navy gain an advantage over powers it considers threats by reaching speeds more than 5 times the speed of sound. As a result, they are much more effective against targets due to their speed and maneuverability. The United States adversaries better be on their guard. The US Navy has long been the most powerful navy on the planet, especially during World War II. But in recent decades, the American fleet seems to be floundering and facing numerous difficulties. In response to this situation, the US Navy is trying to renew itself by developing new defense weapons based on new technology. Can it truly regain its former glory?